This object here is the second witch orb I ever made. And this is the first one where we ever experimentally put these tiny little stick-out bits on them, which I have come to call protuberances, because that's exactly what they are. These can be added to witch orbs to make them a little bit more sticky and branchy. Can be tossed all the way around. They are, however, a slight bit of a double-edged sword. Problem one with protuberances. Storage of the witch orbs becomes more problematic. Unlike a nice spherical witch orb, which is what I did on my first version, this guy will not play nicely with other witch orbs. It will hook up into them, it will collide with them, it will want to grasp them, it may poke them, it may poke into them. There are problems with protuberances and storage. Problem number two with the protuberances. If you have them, they can get pointy and sharp. I'm not talking about, razor edge needle sharp, but I am talking very stiff and pointy because you have paper mache saturated in cotton and it gets about as hard as paper clay sharp. And if some unwary kid in the middle of Halloween night goes walking into one of these things and catches it in the eye, you're looking at a lawsuit. So be very careful if you decide to put these onto your witch orb. That being said, I'm putting these onto my witch orb because they look amazing. I love having these extra branchy little bits here, and I love having these cool little Tim Burton curly cues on there. I just love the enhancement to the look. The first time I ever did them, I took wire and I glued them to the incomplete witch orb, and then I wrapped cotton around them that was saturated in mache paste, and that was a frigging nightmare. So here is how you do protuberances without driving yourself absolutely nuts. Incidentally, this is also how you make hangers that your, hanging material of choice, I'm using brown yarn on all of mine, but it's how your hanging material of choice will loop onto and into your witch orb. To kick off with, all my protuberances are made from this garden wire. Wrapped in plastic, this stuff is approximately, I would guess this is 18 gauge plastic wrapped garden wire. And to make a protuberance, you're going to grab your wire cutters of choice, because obviously this is not the only kind of wire cutter that you can use. Decide how long you want your protuberance. Bear in mind, a certain amount of your protuberance at a right angle is going to be the part that is flush with and sticking to your... God, the lighting on this is terrible for me. Hopefully it's good for you. That's going to be the part that's sticking to your witch orb. So a certain part of this is going to be the bit that is actually making contact with, sticking to the witch orb and holding to it. The rest of this is going to be spinning off in whatever direction and being the protuberance. So leave yourself some stuff to actually stick to and adhere to your witch orb. So let's start with a protuberance here that's going to be about that long. So here's my protuberance. For anybody who is anal retentive, this protuberance is 4 1/4 inches long, and my section of bonding is approximately 1 inch. So 1 inch along the short edge, 4 1/4 inches along the top edge. If you don't know those measurements, that's what Google's for. Next step, grab yourself some cotton coil, which I am running out of, but thankfully I have more of. Grab an equivalent length of cotton coil. Take that cotton coil that is equal to the length of your protuberance and tear it in half. Take the thicker half, if you have a thicker half. If you don't, then just grab either half and tease that thing out. So rather than a whole big wad, it is as open as possible. There we go. Take your piece of wire, wrap the cotton around it. Completely and entirely. And twist it up in the cotton. Sometimes this works better if you do not put your bend in just yet. Keep it straight, but bear in mind that bend will have to be in there eventually. So here is my wire wrapped in cotton. I've got a little bit of extra on the ends. I'm just going to pop it off. I'm still going to leave a buffer of about a ½ inch on there on either side. I don't want this right to the edges. But here I have wire wrapped in cotton. Then I'm going to dunk this stuff into my mache paste. And squeegee it out a little bit. I am just pinching the cotton to squeeze the remainder of the fluid out. So wire wrapped in cotton, soaked in mache paste. Now, going to take the other half of that bit, and I'm going to saturate it in mache paste, except I just ripped that in half, but this still doesn't matter because it still works. I have a little bit of fluid left in my saturation chamber. Saturated piece of cotton, wire wrapped in paste, and now I'm just going to twist it right around the other. And this is going to form my protuberance. I have that extra piece right here that fell off. Ideally they'll stay together, but in this case they didn't, so I'm just going to soak this and repeat the procedure. Squidge out the extra paste, find where it left off, and wrap it. If it gets to the end and I've got too much, I'm just going to pop it off right there. If I have uneven pieces, I don't care. If it looks like it's coming out of shape, whatever, twist it up. So here's my protuberance. At this point, I'm going to bend it into whatever shape I want it to be. The temptation is to make it into a flat branch shape, however it wants to be. Blah, blah. However, don't forget, you have 3 dimensions to work this. You don't have to make it flat. So in this one, I have not worked in this dimension at all. I can still make it that shape, but I can work in this dimension too. So I have this, but it is not completely flat out. I can shape this in 3 dimensions, and indeed I'm going to. This will give you a little bit more workability and more options in your protuberances. Last step though, make sure you have that bend for where this thing is going to stick to your orb. So mine's going to stick to the orb right around here, and it's going to come off wherever I decide to put it. Then you let your protuberance dry and harden overnight. Don't try to shove this onto the orb right now. Let this set, harden, and get itself where you want it first. And then, when you're ready for it, then you stick it on. You can make your protuberance any way you want. Put it around, bend them through. I mean, I don't need to tell you guys. If you're watching this, you're imaginative already. Make your shapes and make them cool. Enjoy. But again, beware of the points. If some little kid goes walking close to my witch orb in the middle of the night, doesn't see this, that can jam him in the face. And you don't want that. So I'm going to set this aside and let that dry. Next step of protuberances. That isn't really a protuberance. You're going to need spots for your hanging stuff to connect to your witch orb. Works in the same exact way. Cut yourself a piece. This piece is going to be forming a loop that eventually you're going to have some sort of wire going through, and this is what your orb's going to hang by. If you need a spacer, then grab yourself a piece of wood or a paintbrush, something that you can wrap and get a size idea on to make sure that that's going to work just fine. I know this should be big enough, and this has the same procedure. Take your wire, take your cotton coil, find a piece that's big enough. You don't have to do a double spiral on this one. You can just wrap this one piece up, dunk it, and call it good, but you can double it if you want it to. I'm going to give this a try. My last witch orb I did not, and I'm kind of curious to see how it is. Grab what's going to be my wire hanger, wrap this piece around it, twist it tight, and now in order to make my loop, I'm just going to wrap it around. Be ready for it to drip and dribble a little bit. If you want to be really savvy about this, have a sizing device handy. Last time I used my Sharpie. I've got a couple sculpting tools here that'll do the same thing. And I am just going to twist this wire together a little bit here, and then I'm going to cock it a little bit to the side, and when I attach this to the orb, that loop is going to hold whatever thread I use to suspend the orb from, and that will harden in that shape overnight. So if my witch orb is here, this is going to stick to it and hold it on. I have a little bit here that is a little bit loose. I don't quite like that. I'll scan for my scissors and snip this bottom bit off. just give it a little bit of a last twist. I hang all of my orbs with 3 loops. You can do 4 or more, depending on how you want to hang it, but that's the general procedure for making one of the loops. They all get hot glued to the witch orb, and then a last little bit of the cotton gets put over them to blend them fully into the design. So those are your loops, and these are your protuberances. I'm going to make a bunch more, and I wish you well in yours. Alright, I have just made 6 protuberances for this witch orb, and 3 loops for my hanging threads at the top. That is how you make them, and no doubt you will see more of them when we come to the stage where we're going to tack them onto our project with some hot glue, and then we're going to cover up any areas where they do not seem to match and fit into the motif with some hot glue, and we'll catch you for that section when we get there.